Hey, Simone here, as always, with some ideas and insights what to pay attention to when you are getting ready to scale your business. So one thing I've noticed that a lot of our clients don't do any strategic planning. And when I've looked into why that is a lot of times what it comes down to is that a lot of leaders feel like it's not worth their time. And a further argument is that why do all the planning when everything changes anyway? So what comes out after that is that the companies run poorly because it's mostly reactive versus proactive. There's no clear goals and objectives in place, and everybody's confused and doing the best they can, but not driving big results. So part of that is true. So according to statistics, 67% of all plans fail. And you might wonder why that is. Well, one reason is leadership myopia. And part of that is understanding how much planning is right. Because it seems like for most leaders, it's either too little or too much. And why do we need planning? Well, to create the opposite, because clear goals avoid leadership drama one-on-one, which is confused teams where everybody is doing badly and nothing well. When people are confused, they can't deliver. So it's kind of like when you think about going grocery shopping without a list. What that generally means is you come home with a whole lot of stuff you don't need, not the stuff that you actually need, and a lot of junk that you should probably not really eat anyway. So that's what badly done planning or no planning will produce in your business. So we have to make sure that we get really clear about what we want, yes. And then the other thing that planning does is it helps us to choose what to say no to. And why that's so important is for most entrepreneurs, shiny gold objects are the funnest part because we're innovators. We are visionaries. A new idea sounds like so much more fun than fixing and dealing and solving problems and doing all that other stuff. That is not super entrepreneurial. It's more operationally focused, and that's the part a lot of entrepreneurs have trouble with, why they're so good at starting businesses, but not really good at running and growing businesses. And that's kind of that crux that we have to address when we want to start growing and scaling. So we need to make sure that we understand what to say no to. Now, some business leaders do too much planning. That means they live in their heads and they completely focus on their vision, which is a great place to start. But then we also need to turn that vision into action, which means implementation. And when you have leaders who do too much planning and don't focus on implementation, that means we have poor implementation. The action is slow. They become the bottleneck for sure. And when you think about that, every thought, every action, every product that you create has to result in action to be valuable and to help the company grow. And that a lot of times there's a pretty big gap between those two. Well, of course, when you do too little planning, it's the opposite problem. Like we discussed before, everybody is confused and doesn't know what to do. Now, there's also that other part when planning doesn't happen or when people get stuck in planning, it's because they consistently look for more data. And that results in analysis paralysis, which is another reason for why things don't get implemented. And that's one of those spots where it's difficult because, of course, we want good data. We want to make sure that we set the business up to succeed with everything that we're doing. We need to research things. We need to make sure we have the right platforms in place. But it's also can become a great excuse to not decide about the stuff that we're uncomfortable with. Because every layer of business, every new layer of business brings a new set of problems and challenges, and that also means a new layer of things we are uncomfortable with. So every time your business grows, every time you go for that next push, that also means you have to make some really difficult decisions. And getting stuck in the planning process means you don't have to make the decisions. And the kind of decisions that are really hard to make is slaying those sacred cows. And what that means is looking at your products, your services, sometimes your team, and recognizing, what are the pieces that have served us, sometimes loyally and for a long time. This is maybe even what you started your business for, what you started your business with. But then as you evolve, as you grow, as things change, as you respond to the market, suddenly there's these these pieces that used to be key that have actually just become a resource drain. Sometimes they're people, a lot of times they're projects, they're platforms, they're other pieces in your business that are actually no longer serving you, but you're putting a ton of your time and your resources and your energy towards those because that's how it used to be. But it's not actually producing the profit or the growth. And those are the only things that we're looking for in terms of accelerated growth, profit or growth. They're not supporting that. So we have to question assumptions. We have to look at, what cuts may we have to make. What in the team we look at, do we need to upgrade, top grade, hire more, move in seats? So there's so many decisions that have to be made consistently, which is why we plan. So this is the difficult part, is striking that balance between thinking and doing. So we have to do the appropriate amount of planning for the appropriate amount of action. Now, what's the right balance? For instance, your average CEO works about 60 hours a week. They work nights, they work weekends, they work on vacations. And what do? They problem solve, they communicate, they cheerlead, they lead their leaders, they make connections, they manage crises, they network, they lead. That's what they do. So that's what the role should look like, although a lot of times it's everything but that. So this is what the average CEO should be doing in their 60 hours a week. Now, appropriate amount of planning at that level, especially for smaller businesses, is 1 hour a day. And here we get to how 1 hour a day can completely change the trajectory and the efficacy and the profit of your business. Because just imagine if you actually spent 1 hour a day thinking purely strategically, looking at how to grow, innovate, improve, what is coming down the pike in the market, all those kind of things. And so that's 1 hour a day for you, for leaders. Then when we look at your middle management, they should be spending about 1 hour a week. And then your employees should be spending about 1 hour a month. So your complete technicians, operators, executors, 1 hour a month. Your managers, kind of mid-level, 1 hour a week. So let's think about this for a sec. If you spend 1 hour a day, your managers spend 1 hour a week. So 1 hour a week, they look at their area of operations, at their team, and make strategic decisions about what needs to change. It's 1 hour a week. What do you think could be possible? Same thing, even if you look at your lowest level employee, if that employee spent 1 hour a month purely thinking about how they can be more effective, more efficient, innovate, implement in a different way, how much different would your company be right now? So when you think about that, it is so little time. That actually means, when we go back to the numbers, that means 12.5% of time for the CEO, 2.5% of time for a manager, and 0.6% of the time for an individual contributor. And the really crazy thing is very, very few people actually do it. Especially CEOs in younger businesses or smaller businesses. 1 hour a day sounds like nirvana. It sounds like the dream that nobody's actually living. But it's also the thing that everybody thinks they will do when they have it dialed in. It's not like they're too busy right now to do it. But because they're not doing it, they're too busy with things that are not actually effective, that are not actually helping them to grow. They're actually just maintaining. And that's the problem. When you are not being strategic, when you don't plan, you will always just maintain. And chances are you'll always be the one who's the organic bottleneck. And you'll always be the one that has to fix everything, solve everything, that everybody's problems end up becoming your problems. So this is where CEOs should spend 21% on strategy every day and every week. So when you think about how that works in small businesses, most likely your business, the leader sets the direction. In larger companies where you have experts and teams of experts, actually the teams set strategy before the leadership looks at the strategy. So this is kind of like it gets pre-chewed and delivered, and then the leadership actually looks at it and goes, okay, this is what aligns, this is what doesn't, this is what we need to work on. So we want to make sure that before we deliver strategy, that we also ask the team to brainstorm with us, because we want to make sure that we get their buy-in. So it's kind of like you're giving them a version of your strategy and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Now I need your input. Help me poke holes into this. Help me make it better. Help me think about some better solutions. Now, this is only possible when you have a team of strategic thinkers. When you don't, you bring the strategy to them, and then you brainstorm with some of them who can actually do this. And when you think about speed versus substance, that 1 hour a day will deliver incredible results for you, and it will pay you back on the back end multifold. So to deliver strategy takes time. And that's why it's a habit that you need to start delivering, because the more time you spend in strategy, the better your decisions will be for the business. And part of the reason for why so many leaders don't take time out to be strategic, like I mentioned in the beginning, is because they don't think it's worth their time, because things change all the time. Because, well, why even make a plan if we constantly have to change the plan? Well, we need to look at this like this is your guideline. This is your guideline with a clear outcome. So we have clear outcomes that we're going for, and it's a guideline for how to get to that outcome. So we have to execute flexibly. So we have to look at this like, okay, we know what the North Star is, we know where we're going, but we're going to dance on our way to get there, because there's so many external circumstances that we can't predict, that we have to stay in a place of being flexible and giving it the time along the way that it needs. So it is a living, breathing thing that's never set in stone. We have to constantly give it the attention that it needs when we get the data, when we get the input to make decisions. So, and then the other thing that's really interesting is some people, many leaders actually take the time to do that planning. A lot of them just do it at the end of the year, but then they never revisit the plan. And that's, again, in terms of being flexible and creating a plan that's actually actionable, we have to revisit that plan on a regular basis. Like every day, every week, every month, every quarter, we consistently have to look back at the plan, go, what has been the market input? What have been the reactions? What have we gotten from our customers? What's going on in the market, so that we agilely adjust the plan to make sure that our plan is always current and actionable. So I love this quote by Peter Drucker. He says, Strategy is not a one-time event, but an iterative, evaluative process. And that's how we have to look at it. It's an iterative evaluation process. So we constantly update it, we constantly give it the data that it needs. Because when you think about it, when you're honest with yourself, what's not planned doesn't get done. And maybe a lot of the things that you did get done, when you really look at it, they didn't really give you a whole lot of value. So the important thing is that you start shifting your thinking from, a lot of entrepreneurs live in short-term planning. They look at, what's happening this week, what's happening this month. But what we really need to start looking at is long-term planning, because I know the pressure is to solve short-term problems, and that's where everybody gets stuck, solving short-term problems. And that's not where we can live as successful leaders. Successful CEOs spend more than 50% of their time thinking long-term. Otherwise, it's always like you're just going to make a million detours and you never have clear goals and objectives, which also means it's really hard to lead a team. So this is really, really important to change as a growing entrepreneur. And anytime you're thinking that planning isn't worth it, well, think about it this way. If you don't have a map and you're trying to go somewhere, you're going to get lost a whole lot. And nothing is perfect in planning. You need to expect change. You need to expect that things will be different than you thought, but then you make adjustments. That's part of your role. When, like George Patton said, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. So this is not something you want to wait until the beginning of next year to start doing. You want to start doing this today. Just think about what 1 hour a day could change in your business. If you spend 1 hour a day being strategic about what you're doing, how would things be different? So anyway, I hope this is really impactful for you. We just have a brand new training out there that addresses all this in detail, all the systems and structures around this, so that you really get to implementation. So go to bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, and check out the training. I will see you in there.